Checking in at number 3 of our Notre Dame's top 25 most important players for the 2020 season is Liam Eichenberg, who has been Notre Dame's left tackle for the past couple seasons, and he will man that spot once again in 2020. He's been an Iron Man for this Fighting Irish offense, and the expectations for him, Patrick, have to be huge for this season.
When you think of important offensive linemen, left tackle is kind of the one where you start at, and Eichenberg certainly fits that and is maybe Notre Dame's best draft prospect for next year. Maybe sneaks into the first round depending on what happens this year. And you have I know we've talked about Josh Lugg seemingly with every lineman we've had on here,
Right.
and Eichenberg is the fifth, but if you take away Eichenberg, you have a drop off because you're not playing a high round draft pick in all likelihood, and that has to matter. And Eichenberg, I know we had some of the 11 penalties, a lot of those on false starts, was kind of something that came up. Certainly not anything that is this horrible concern or only a thing that's going to absolutely tank his draft value, but didn't allow a sack last year. Like all the other linemen, still has a little bit of room to come as a more consistent run defender, as Notre Dame's running game just tries to be a little bit more consistent than what it was a year ago. But this is an important spot on really any offense, and Notre Dame has a longtime starter, likely early-ish rounds draft pick, who's played at a high level for a little while now overall, and done a nice job of keeping Ian Book protected.
According to Pro Football Focus, he posted a pass blocking grade of 85.6 and a run blocking grade of 78.8. Both were best on the Fighting Irish offensive line last year. And like you mentioned, did not concede a sack, allowed just 3 quarterback hits and 9 hurries and 496 pass plays. I feel like if you break down the math there, it's a pretty good percentage. You mentioned the draft stock a couple times. What are some of those draft pundits out there saying about Eichenberg? Is he of course it's so early to be talking about that, but what's kind of some of the early draft stock for Eichenberg?
Yeah, you've seen some second round or late first round, even, or third round projections. Obviously this is before he has another entire season to play that can make that go one way or another. But in the grades you just mentioned reflected, this is the best offensive lineman on what everyone has kind of lauded this offseason as one of the country's best offensive lines. And in and of itself, that should equate to a pretty high spot on any list like this of what we're doing. And Eichenberg certainly fits the bill of no glaring weaknesses here, where he's going to overall be pretty good in the run as a run blocker and going to keep Book upright as that elite passing grade would attest to. And having not allowed any sacks at all, and like you mentioned, a really good pressure rate, there's a lot to be said for what happens when you take that away.
Now, Patrick, you mentioned people are talking about this is the best offensive line unit in the country. When you see those lists and Notre Dame's at the top, what's your reaction? Do you agree with it? Not that we're asking you to be the offensive line expert to know everything about every offensive line in the nation, but what's your reaction when you see people say that this is the best offensive line in the country?
There's certainly ingredients for it to be there, with guys who are experienced and will, in all likelihood, have a number of them who were drafted. But I still want to see some things where this was a unit that had its ups and downs last year, especially in the running game and with the running game against good teams in Georgia and Michigan, where it really wasn't able to do much at all. So you have 114 career starts coming back. That's believed to be the most in Notre Dame's history. But I think it's a little sometimes too easy to get that confused with just assuming great production, and that sure, there's a risk that these guys are all, with the exception of center Jarrett Patterson, in at least their 4th year on campus. And you can kind of wonder, is this what they're going to be, or what they're going to be last year, or what they were last year is what they're going to be in 2020? And that's very good, but I certainly don't think that would be mistaken for the best line in the country or anything. But nonetheless, when you have guys who've done this a while and project favorably as NFL prospects, it certainly belongs in the conversation of what has the potential to be the best line in the country.